U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Ambassador, I want to start with President Trump's tweet after the military action against Syria. Here it is. A perfectly executed strike last night. Could not have had a better result. Mission accomplished. A lot of people say that echoes President Bush 43's premature claim of mission accomplished back in 2003. Isn't President Trump's claim of success just as premature?
Well, first of all, mission accomplished is a military term, and as a military spouse, I know that mission accomplished means you have one task currently in front of you, and when it's completed, it is mission accomplished. Politically, mission accomplished means something broader, and I think that the president was referring in military terms. We, of course, know that our work in Syria is not done. We know that it is now up to Bashar al-Assad on whether he's going to use chemical weapons again, and should he use it again, the president has made it very clear that the United States is locked and loaded and ready to go.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that because obviously you have no idea how Assad is going to respond to this attack, although I suspect you think that he got the message. And to add a little bit to this confusion, President Trump and Defense Secretary Mattis sent very different signals on Friday night about the campaign. Take a look at both of them.
We are prepared to sustain this response until the Syrian regime stops its use of prohibited chemical agents.
Right now, this is a one-time shot.
So which is it, a one-time shot or a sustained response?
That is totally up to Assad. What I can tell you is the president has made it very clear that when it comes to weapons of mass destruction, we have no tolerance for it. We are going to watch out for the best interests of the American people. And so he made a point, and hopefully Assad gets it. If Assad doesn't get it, it's going to hurt. And I think what General Mattis was saying was these strikes happened basically responding to their continued use of chemical weapons. But of course, if Assad continues to go forward, there will be more, and it will hurt. And I think that he has a lot to think about.
I want to pick up on that because there are certainly indications since the first strike in April of last year that Assad had used chemical weapons and there had been no U.S. response. This particular case last weekend was especially egregious and horrific. But are you saying that going forward that any use of chemical weapons by Assad will trigger an immediate U.S. response?
Well, I think, first of all, you said it. This last one was egregious. It was barbaric, and it was disgusting. And so I think what you saw was there had been a cumulative wave of constant use of chemical weapons. Assad knew that Russia had his back. Assad knew that Russia would cover for him at the United Nations. And Assad got reckless, and he used it in a way that was far more aggressive. We have to be very conscious of the fact that we can't allow even the smallest use of chemical weapons. That's why you saw the president strike this past weekend. That's why you saw him expel 60 Russian spies after the attack in Salisbury. This very easily could happen in the United States if we're not smart and if we're not conscious of what's happening. And so this was a message sent to Assad. We'll see how smart he is.
But to press my point, if I may, are you saying that going forward there is zero tolerance, any use by Assad of chemical weapons will trigger a military response?
Well, I don't think there's any way that I can answer that. I mean, we don't know what he's going to do, the level he's going to do, or anything else. I will tell you that the president's watching, and I think the national security team is ready. So basically, we will watch his actions. He now dictates his life, and he dictates what happens between the United States, our allies, and his regime. And so hopefully he's gotten the message. It was a pretty strong message. Not only did we go after their absolute strongest research facility, we went after their storage units where they hold the products, and we went after their production. So we put a heavy blow into their chemical weapons program, setting them back years, and I'm sure that it's going to take them a lot to recover from it.
Ambassador, here's a question that a lot of people have. You have spoken very movingly about the slaughter of civilians in Syria. And we are seeing pictures right now of the attack in Douma. But doesn't the president's policy allow the mass murder of women and children to continue as long as it's carried out with conventional weapons and not chemical weapons?
Well, I think that's just a very unfair question. In what respect are you asking that?
Well, what I'm saying is that we are saying that any use of chemical weapons we're going to respond to, but we're not saying that about conventional weapons, and Assad has slaughtered hundreds of thousands of his people. Why are we drawing a distinction and saying to Assad it's okay to do it with conventional weapons, but we're going to object if you do it with chemical weapons?
I don't think we've ever said it's okay, period. There is no way that any American or the president would ever say it's okay to kill women and children. I think that we have a lot of issues in the world, and I think we're trying to put out as many fires as we can. We can't control what a country does to its people. We can condemn it. We can acknowledge it. We can try and do everything at the United Nations. I think what you've seen is the president has used a lot of sanctions, whether it's been in Venezuela, whether it's been related to Syria, whether it's related to Russia and human rights. There's been a lot of things that we have done and taken action. We've never sat back and watched bad things happen. We do wait and use military force as a last response to that. But we've always acted in every way related to every incident in some form, just to let them know how much the United States condemns it.
I want to ask you about U.S. actions and how we are responding, though, when it comes to the displacement and the torture of the Syrian people. I want you to look at some State Department numbers on how many refugees have come into this country over the last 3 years. In 2016, more than 15,000 Syrian refugees came into this country. Last year, 3,000. So far this year, 11. On humanitarian grounds, how do you justify that?
Well, I will tell you, we have spent well over $6 billion on the Syrian conflict. I personally went to the refugee sites in both Jordan and Turkey. I spent time with refugees, whether they were in camps or whether they were out, and I talked to them about the situation at hand. I will tell you, from a humanitarian standpoint, the United States has been a massive donor to this situation, but also when I talk to the refugees, what I talk to them about, they want to go home. And there's a mountain that they look over, and they know that it's on the other side, and they know that Syria is in shambles, and they are prepared to rebuild it. But not one of the many that I talked to ever said we want to go to America. They want to stay as close to Syria as they can, so that when, God willing, this fighting stops, and when there's finally stability and peace in that area, they want to go rejoin their family members. They want to go back to what they remember. The kids talked about where they used to play and what they used to do. The adults talked about the fact that that's where they were born, that's where they were raised. There was a real emotional string to Syria, and I think we need to be conscious of the fact that's really where they want to go.
Let's talk about the overall strategy for Syria, because a couple of weeks ago, President Trump talked about a very fast pullout of our troops there. Take a look.
We're knocking the hell out of ISIS. We'll be coming out of Syria like very soon. Let the other people take care of it now. Very soon.
President Trump reportedly wanted to get all 2,000 U.S. troops out within 48 hours and had to be persuaded by folks at the Pentagon to keep them there for a couple of months, which raises the question, what is our goal in Syria and what is our strategy to get there?
Well, I can tell you, because I was in the National Security Council meetings with the president when it came to discussing Russia, and he had three major goals that he wanted to accomplish. He, one, wanted to make sure that chemical weapons were not used, or weapons of mass destruction were not used in any way that could harm American national interest. He wanted to make sure that we defeated ISIS completely and wholly, to make sure that all of that threat was gone, because it is a threat to American national interests. And he wanted to make sure that we had good grounds to watch what Iran was doing, and they weren't making a lot of aggressive headway in terms of that, because Iran is a national threat to American interests. And so I think that, no, he never thought he'd get out in 48 hours. Yes, it is all of our goal to see American troops come home, but we're not going to leave until we know we have accomplished those things. What he has done is talk to our allies and said they need to step up more. They need to do more, and it shouldn't just be us doing it. And I think that's the right approach. But be very clear. If we leave, when we leave, it will be because we know that everything is moving forward. We're very invested in the political process in Geneva. We're very invested on a political solution, and those talks continue.
One area where there has been a dramatic escalation in the last week has been in the direct verbal attacks by the administration on Russian President Putin. Here's a tweet from President Trump this week. President Putin, Russia and Iran are responsible for backing Animal Assad. And here you are at the UN.
History will record that on this day, Russia chose protecting a monster over the lives of the Syrian people.
Ambassador, has our relationship with Putin and Russia changed this week?
Well, I think it's been changing over time. This is a very strained time between the United States and Russia. I mean, if you look at what Russia is doing, they continue to be involved with all the wrong actors. I mean, whether it's their involvement in Ukraine, whether you look at how they're supporting Maduro in Venezuela, whether you look in Syria and their way of propping up Assad and working with Iran, that continues to be a problem. I mean, there's multiple issues that we have with Russia right now and what they're doing, whether it's the chemical weapons use in Great Britain. That was another issue. So what we're doing is we're letting Russia know this is not something that we want to be a part of. It's not something we're going to tolerate, and they've got to make a decision. Right now, they don't have very good friends, and right now the friends that they do have are causing them harm. I think they're feeling that, whether it's been with the fact that we've sanctioned just recently the Russian oligarchs, which made their stock market plummet, whether it's the fact that we gave arms to Ukraine, which makes them realize that their life is about to get harder in that region, whether it's us sending 60 spies home to let them know that we're not going to put up with you using a chemical agent anywhere, or whether it's the sanctions that are continuing to happen, which you'll see again on Monday, that lets them know this is not good behavior. So everything that has strained this relationship has been on the side of Russia. The military strikes did not have to happen if Russia had not covered for Assad. 6 times they vetoed chemical weapons resolutions related to Syria. And this last resolution that they had, they only had 3 votes out of 15. The international community is telling Russia that either you make a decision on how you act and when you act, or the rest of us will make a decision in isolating you.
So in 15 seconds, how would you characterize U.S. relations with Putin and Russia right now?
Very strained right now, but our hope is always to make sure we can get a better relationship with Russia. It's in our best national interest to do that, but we're not going to put up bad behavior to get it.
Ambassador Haley, thank you. Thanks for taking the time with all you've got going on right now. We'll stay on top of the latest developments.
Great. Thanks so much.
Up next, we'll bring in our Sunday group to discuss the situation in Syria and where the U.S., our allies,